reality
Therapist
what's been going
perception.
on.
Bachelorette. Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I am Chris. I'm not a licensed therapist, but I don't think this show requires one, quite frankly, especially after episode. The stuff this episode was about as armchair psychology as one could be, I feel like.
I guess we'll see.
I mean, I can't unsee some of this stuff. Thank God for Leia, because if it wasn't for her coming in and backfilling the empty void left by Sydney, this would have been a really boring, highly predictable episode. And Leia just completely showing her age and bombing into the end here. It really just made the entire episode, I feel like. Without her, it would have been a terrible episode.
It was a another great episode. This season is winning. This season is winning.
It was like a horse that runs late, is what I'll say.
I don't know that expression.
You know, when you go to the racetrack?
Never been.
Never been? Oh. I've only been once. I made like $150. It was a fantastic time. So what happens is that some horses run strong the whole way, and they go out and they just try to lead the whole race.
Sure.
Other horses will kind of lag, and they'll come on like the last leg. I don't go to the track enough to really know all the nuanced details. But this felt like an episode. It felt like one of those horses that
strong finish.
Strong finish. Yeah, it's it's one that's way back in the pack, conserving its energy, and then just sprints to the end and tries to take it in a dead sprint. That's what this episode felt like to me.
Okay, well, we will get into all of that and more. But just, to say what we're doing here tonight, we are talking about season 28, episode 4 of The Bachelor, which is Joey's season. We literally just finished watching, so we are hot off the episode. Haven't even really discussed. We're gonna see what happens tonight, knowing that we also have another episode this week.
And that's the key. We wanted to make sure that we had a chance to get this episode out and edited and up without giving every away. Because if we wait till tomorrow to record, give ourselves time to think about it, well, by that point, a lot of our predictions and whatnot are just going to get spoiled by tomorrow's episode. So, wanted to shorten that window as much as possible. Yeah. So you're getting a very, very, very raw reaction to this dumpster fire of an episode,
but in a great way.
I mean, that's an opinion. That's a strong opinion, I feel like. So,
but actually, just to talk about the schedule a little bit. So we're recording this Monday right after this episode aired, and then we likely won't get the second episode of the week to you until the end of the week, just given our schedules, our ability to watch and then record and edit. So just a heads up that the part 2 for this week is coming, just likely later this week. Well, all the more reason to hit the bell icon. I know that that's your line, but also to make sure that you're subscribed to our channel so that you get notified whenever that next episode drops. And I want to thank you if you're a new subscriber. Thank you for being here. We are still trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. We gained a bunch more last week. Let's keep it going. I think we can get there.
Yeah. And just to recap, 1,000 subscribers is a really, really important landmark with YouTube. Basically, it's when we can start getting ad revenue, and any revenue that we get from ads is going to get plowed right back into the show. Better equipment, new equipment, maybe producer eventually. And so, it's a small free thing that you get to do, but for us, it means all the world. So we appreciate you hitting that subscribe button for us. Yes.
Okay. Are we doing this?
Let's do it. I already touched on the fact that Leia, for me, was the salvation of the episode. But in a nutshell, no surprises for the first hour and 45 minutes, basically. It's exactly what we called last week. We were getting a 2-on-1, and they tried to do some build-up, but there was no real drama to it. We got a group date, and we got a one-on-one. They are going to travel off to Malta. For those of you who don't know where Malta is, it's in the Mediterranean Sea. It's basically directly south of Sicily. So you Italians out there, you should know where Malta is. So yeah. So where do you want to start?
Let's go in chronological order.
Okay. One-on-one date.
Right. So Lexi gets chosen for the one-on-one date. And this is a very typical Bachelor date, especially when they're traveling to a foreign country. Oh, also just want to note, typically the first traveling date for the Bachelorette is somewhere
warm.
No.
Sexy.
What's it called when you travel? Oh, domestic.
Oh.
So they usually travel to some
No passport required.
no passport required city that's a little bit like meh.
Mm.
No offense if they've ever gone to your city. They've come close to us. They've gone to like Mohegan Sun at one point, like
I like
several
Mohegan
seasons
Sun.
ago. Yeah, but it's kind of like meh.
Well, yeah,
It's not Malta.
that's fair. Yeah.
So they skipped that whole part and they brought us directly to Malta.
Mhm.
And Lexi gets the one-on-one and they just kind of roam around the city, explore the city, and meet some locals and taste some things. They went to a beautiful church, and throughout the whole date, we kind of see Lexi building up to something that had already been previewed to us on night one. That she really, really wants to build a family and be a mom, but given some of her health issues, may not be able to do that naturally.
Yeah. All right. So I have a bunch of things that I want to touch on here. We all know that I have Lexi in our Survivor Bachelor pool.
Mhm.
So big fan. But last week I talked about how it felt like a production heavy handed episode and how production was really setting certain people up to shine and was really setting other people up to fail and fall. And I said it's very clear that Lexi is somebody that production wants to go far. She has not had a strong opening because a little bit timid or whatever. And now production, specifically in episode 3, really pushed her to the forefront. And we still see that firm, aggressive hand of production pushing her forward. What did they do? They gave her a one-on-one date. And it's also a fantastic date if your goal is to actually get to know somebody.
Mhm.
It wasn't a bunch of fluffy nonsense. It was you and I walking around, having a chance to have real conversation, interacting with locals and various different things in a way where I can actually see who you are as a person, how you're going to react. Yes, the cameras are still on, but it's not one of these contrived things where we're going to go rappelling or whatever, or some other, hit bumper cars or some nonsense. And this, I feel like, provides further evidence to my thesis last time that production wants Lexi to go far and they're going to continually prop her up and elevate her. And they did exactly that. And she knocked it out of the park. She's a beautiful young woman. She has a great story. She seems like a genuine person. She's also on the older end of the cast, and at that age where she's, I'll say, reached a level of maturity many of the other women in the house have not reached. And so there's just something really there to love and gravitate towards. And they're setting her up 2 weeks in a row now to put her front and center in front of Joey. Listen, if I were Joey, I'd be happy because stick Lexi in front of me. Fantastic.
Well,
But yeah,
you're acting as though this isn't an edited show.
yeah,
So the edit might be forecasting something about the end because they already know what happens.
Sure. Yeah.
And so they could be packaging this in such a way to let us know, like for us to prop Lexi up, not for Joey.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like this has already happened.
This could be a audition potentially for the next Bachelor.
Sure.
Because let's face facts, of all the women on the show, if it's fairly common for the next Bachelor or Bachelorette to be a contestant on the prior season, who in this season,
Daisy,
other than Daisy, who else? Because I still think Daisy's winning this. So who other than Daisy? Excuse me.
I don't know enough of the other women yet to opine on that, but I think of who we've seen, I think Daisy and Lexi are the strongest contenders.
Well, and Maria, because she would just make an awesome. She has the strength of
like
personality.
the Nick Vial of the Bachelorettes, if she were ever.
She has the personality.
I'm a Nick fan.
Yeah.
That was no shade.
But Maria has the personality to carry a season and be an exciting Bachelorette, whereas some of the others maybe not so much. But yeah, going back to what you referenced about how Lexi wanted to talk about her health conditions. This I actually thought was a really, really fascinating reaction by Joey. I feel like this is the first time where he genuinely, to me, looked like he didn't know how to respond. He immediately started to go into what I've talked about in the past, robot mode. He starts hitting all of the typical, statements. But his delivery on them was vastly different than we seen in the past. In the past, it's he hits all the notes that he's supposed to say, and it either comes across as extremely robotic or it comes across as extremely genuine. This was the first time where it felt to me like he didn't actually know how to respond, how to carry the weight of what she had just told him. And I thought the words he used were fantastic. I thought the emotion was real and genuine, but to me, it looked like there was real terror on his face. Your thoughts?
I thought Joey handled that really well, A plus. And we have at Revive, we have like a group chat of those of us who watch it, and therapists agree 10 out of 10 for
Look, for a
Joey.
28-year-old male who's never been in that situation,
Yeah.
I don't think you could ask for anything better than what
But
he did.
of course it's terrifying. Like to now hold someone's like experience who feels some guilt about it, has been broken up with about this in the past. Like the math he must have been doing in his head about like how to respond in just the right way, to be authentic, to make sure that she feels heard and validated, to let her know that this is not, you know, you letting me down in any way. Like the gymnastics that you have to do. And I say that as a therapist because that's like what our job is essentially to go through that obstacle course every day with the stuff that we hear. So like, yeah, I'm sure it was terrifying for him to do that. But I think that he communicated really well, and I think he did hit all the right notes, and he did seem genuine. If not, like, I think the thing that he was worried about was fucking it up,
Yeah.
and not saying the right thing. But I think he did. I think he did a great job. This is maybe a little bit of a spoiler to what my rose is tonight, but I know what you're saying about like him sometimes being a little too perfect. But what I really appreciated about him during this episode, I think I like almost blushed when he did it a couple of times. Like he like pokes fun at himself. Like
Yeah.
he's good at that. Like he's a little bit goofy. He's like not afraid to be a little cheesy, and that really felt genuine. It didn't feel like he was playing a part, like, you know, when he called himself like the fun-sized bachelor, like or like I should have done a couple of extra push-ups or something like that. I mean, you look great, Joey. You look fine to me. But I just appreciate that. Like there is such a genuineness to him that just jumps off the screen.
Yeah, I love Joey's ability to poke fun at himself. You know, there's a quiet confidence in, and we talk about this all the time. Like whenever I'm in a group of guys, usually I'll be the one that will sort of poke fun at himself, because once you get a group of guys together, the best way to get them into sort of a community feel is to all target them at one thing and get a little banter going. And you know, there's a confidence in being the one that, you know, is being the one bantered about. It's like, you know, it just shows that you're not really all that concerned and you can go with the flow of things. And it's just a great quality to have. So I'm a big fan of Joey. I am.
Okay, going back to the Lexi date, I'm not sure that there is. I mean, it was just so beautiful. Like I don't know that there was more to say. You know, she shared vulnerably. Stage 5 endometriosis is really, really tough.
I don't know anything about that.
I'm not gonna
attempt.
Yeah, you can Google later.
I'll drop something in the
Not
show
my
notes.
area of expertise. Honestly, I was like a little bit worried that she's been talking about like having a health related issue that could impact her having kids, and I was like sort of worried it was going to be like blown out of proportion, because that can happen sometimes on these shows, is like you might hyperbolize something for like the effect of like having a narrative, and so I was a little bit skeptical about what she might share, but totally legitimate share here. So and I could understand too, like being a woman and especially feeling like, I think she used the word called, like called to being a mother, and knowing that your body might not cooperate, like something that's completely out of your control. It must feel like horrible and out of control. And I think for a lot of women, there is like some shame that gets associated with not being able to fulfill like that biological need or want or like responsibility, like what our bodies like have been, you know, used for, can hypothetically do. And so I really was empathizing with her for what she's gone through in getting this diagnosis and ultimately having a relationship end over it. And that she's 30, you know, we can't ignore like age is a factor here. And so like it is something that you need to put out on the table, especially if, you know, again, having a family is important to you. And so like it was one of those things where like, was it too early to share? Probably not. Like probably not for the stage of where she is at The Bachelor, and also probably not for like the stage she is in life. So I just appreciated her vulnerability in sharing that.
That's interesting you go there, because that was actually going to be my question to you. Is they've only known each other here for
4 weeks,
I don't
3 weeks.
it's probably 3 weeks, if that. Is at what point in time, would you think you want to share something like that
At what point in time
in
do
the
you
dating
do
process?
you think that you would want to know something like that about a prospective partner?
This is one of those things where I don't think I'm a great judge here, because I'm consider myself a pretty much an open book. And you went on a first date with me. I lay it all out there on date one, what I want, what I don't want, and so this is something that, I would share if I knew that I was, potentially incapable of having children. It's something that I would deliver on a first date.
But more,
for
I
me.
was meaning, oh, so if you were saying,
If I was the one who
Mhm.
who potentially couldn't. Now, when would I want to hear it? Um, in this particular case, because I was always, my take on children has always been whatever my wife wants. If my wife wants to have kids, we'll have kids. If she doesn't want to have kids, it's not a big deal. But let's say it was something that I truly cared about,
Mhm.
that I had a strong opinion about. I would want to know as soon as possible.
Mhm. Mhm.
Earlier is always better. Um, you know, uh, Maybe not the first date,
Mhm.
but certainly by the third date, if
Mhm.
if you've liked somebody enough to go out with them 3 times, um, you know,
Mhm. Yeah, and I think this is a really big question, like especially as it relates to dating apps or just modern dating in general, is like if you do have something that's relevant that could impact your collective future, like when do you share it? Whether like even if like say it's a and I don't want to have children,
Mhm.
like is that something that you put on your dating app profile? Is that something that you share on date one? And so I think like find navigating that the timing of when that needs to happen is like very, very nuanced. And because I
Mhm.
think that there is a balance of like, let's see if you even like the person first
Absolutely, yeah,
before you share this thing. Like not to be vulnerable for the sake of vulnerability. And so I do agree that like coming out with it on the first date probably isn't correct. Like it's still
yeah,
an interview
yeah,
at
absolutely,
that point. But yeah, I think a couple dates in, like when you've exchanged intimacy, and I don't just mean physical intimacy, but like some closeness,
Mhm.
where you can see it going to a next level, then yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's important. And they're there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think to your point, a lot of it depends on the nature, right? I think there's a big difference between I am making a conscious decision about something as opposed to there's a possibility something can't happen.
Mhm.
If I say was like I'm just never getting married. I'll date, I'll live with you, we'll be monogamous, but I'm never getting married. That's a first date conversation.
Mhm.
That's a put it on your profile thing
Mhm.
because that's a conscious decision you've made and you shouldn't waste people's
Mhm.
time. If you are just flat out not interested in kids, and there's nothing medically wrong, that's preventing it, then again, that's a profile thing. Don't waste people's time.
Mhm.
If it's possible, like in Lexi's case, it's possible, but I don't know, um, you know, it's based on more of a medical thing. Then now you're into the area of, yeah, you wait a few dates, see how it goes, and then, have the conversation because you don't know if it's a guarantee or not. And so I do think there's a lot, to your point, nuance
Mhm.
in when you tell people. And a lot of it, I think, for me, has more to do with the definitiveness of the answer and the voluntariness of the
Mhm.
answer.
Of the like if it's a
The,
choice.
yeah, if you are making a conscious choice, then it's something that
Mhm.
deserves to be spoken of sooner. And if it is definitive, um, then I think it deserves to be spoken of sooner.
Mhm.
The more possibility there is in a change in answer or in something not being definitive,
Mhm.
I think the more latitude you can give to the situation.
Mhm. Mhm. I think as a general rule, I think that's okay. I'm not sure about like the putting things on a profile. I guess it depends what dating site you're on. Um,
I don't have any data. I met you au natural
out in the wild.
out in the wild.
That's a story for another day if you're
Yeah.
ever interested.
I've never been on a dating app, so I don't actually,
Mhm.
I'm too old for dating apps.
You mean they came out before after your time?
I was 30 when I got my first smartphone.
I just want to take a quick pause to tell you that Revive is hiring. In our Miami and Pittsburgh offices, we have full and part-time W-2 and 1099 clinician positions available, and this includes both postgraduate and associate level licenses, in addition to fully licensed clinicians. In our Connecticut offices, we have full-time, fully licensed W-2 clinician positions available, including clinical supervisor opportunities. If you are interested in working for a company that values community, work-life balance, and your personal and professional growth, then we want to meet you. Find a link to our website in our bio.
Okay, so before we move on to the group date, there's sort of a whole lingering thing back at the house. We open the episode with them talking about the Maria Sydney situation, a bunch of face to cameras, and a bunch of conversations between various different girls. Then at various points in time during the Lexi date, we cut back to the house and they're still talking about it. We're getting a bunch of face to cameras with Sydney, who is just in this crazy spiral. I mean, making claims that are not supported by anything that we've seen.
Talking about how this all feels like torture, how her health is now impacted by the extreme stress that she's under. So
yeah, high levels of anxiety and a lot of stuff that we just haven't seen. Can't say it's not happening, but not a lot of support for what we're seeing on the show.
Well, perception is reality.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. And so the date card comes and shocker, everybody is on the group date minus Maria and Sydney, because they spoiled it in the trailer that we're getting a 2-on-1. So it's there are 15 women remaining, which means there are 12 on this group date, which is, my God, I never want to be on a 12-on-1 date ever. That sounds awful on every level.
That was a really big group date.
I mean, it's so many people. Like I would not want to date 32 women. I don't have the brain power to process that much.
Chris texted me, we weren't watching the episode together last week, and he texted me while watching the episode saying, like, I don't get it. How does Joey make so many connections?
Like, I just don't think I like people enough to like,
to even fake it.
To even fake, I'm very bad at faking it. I'm either in or I'm out, and I would be the worst bachelor ever, because I would eliminate, if they put 32 women in front of me, I would eliminate 20 of them on night one, and like a producer like, Chris, you got to keep these people. Like, get them out of here. No, see ya.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Not interested.
Okay, well, that's not what Joey did.
You'd make it to the end.
I mean, I hope so.
You'd be at least my top 3.
So Joey did end up going on this massive group date with 12 women, and they go to Fort Manuel, also in Malta. And we get the little fun fact, trivia tidbit that...
Don't spoil.
Oh, come on, it's been how many years?
It's been a lot of years.
Yeah, we're fine to spoil.
I mean, it was season 1. There were 7 seasons to the show.
Yeah, so. we're good. So this is the same area where Ned Stark from Game of Thrones was beheaded, which was cool.
It's a fort where they filmed the final episode of season 1 with Ned Stark. Yeah,
it was great. Baylor.
The Temple of Baylor, or where the statue of Baylor is. Yeah.
So during this date, the women are sort of training to be knights, and they're put through some ludicrous challenges to see who could be, I guess, the best knight, and whoever won would get more time with Joey. Not the group date rose. They're doing this again. They just get more time with Joey.
Yeah, as somebody who really enjoys medieval history, I got kind of a kick out of it. The kind of terrible Halloween style costumes was, cute little touch. I didn't love it for a lot of the reasons that you guys have all heard me talk about many times. Joey's not getting a lot of like real good time with the women.
Listen, this is where we get to see Kelsey A.
She
shine.
goes for it.
She
always
does. And we see like time after time. And if you watch through the end of the episode, she makes her presence known. She's right next to him. She
always
goes in for the kiss. And she did here. I was like, damn. Like,
and she started the kiss train.
Yeah.
Once she started, everyone else started throwing the kisses around. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was not necessarily expecting to see that from her. But like, again, we're seeing a little bit more and more of Kelsey A. So she's one to watch. She's on my list.
Yeah. I don't get it, because all we see are these like group date situations with her. She's got to be due for a one-on-one, right? Just feels like she's got to be due.
Yeah.
Because he seems to really like her. She's doing all the right things, but they really just haven't had any genuine like one-on-one time together
That we've seen.
that we've seen. Yeah. So I'm gonna predict that in the next 2 or 3 episodes, she's getting this one-on-one next. Yeah. I mean, then they do the sausage wheel thing. You know how I feel about cheaters. I hate when people cheat. It just drives me nuts. Like, what's the point of doing anything if you're going to cheat? And the fact that Autumn didn't cheat, she's probably the only one who didn't cheat. Uh, and so they gave her the award of the extra time. I for one thought that was justice and thought that that was the only right decision for who should have won this date. So I give the fake night trainers tons of credit and props for picking the right person. And I give Autumn has been one of those people that other people really like her. I think she's fun enough, but I don't really, she's not anywhere for me, I don't care one way or the other. But my respect for her rise significantly.
Well, we heard like throughout the entire like portion of that, like the voiceover of her saying like, I haven't gotten any time with Joey. Like I want to get time with Joey. And then she definitely like goes out of her way to try to get it. While watching those sausages spin around, I couldn't not think of the line from Clueless where Amber says, Miss Stoker, my plastic surgeon doesn't want me doing any activity where balls fly at my nose. Another high character moment for Joey, though, was when he said, like, hey, like, I can't ask them to do this if I'm not willing to do this too. And he stepped in and he did it himself. Again, like A+ for Joey. He wins at being the Bachelor.
Can I say that is a sign of a great leader as well? You know what? If I'm going to call this episode, like name this episode, it's Joey demonstrates the type of leader he is. Because this is another real great kind of power. Leaders, bosses, great bosses will never ask you to do something that they wouldn't do themselves and haven't done themselves in a lot of cases. And I say this all the time, when we hired a billing specialist at Revive. And the first thing I said to her when she started is, I'll never ask you to do something that I haven't done myself and I'm willing to do because I need to know what you're going through in order to manage you and make sure that you're getting the resources you need. That is such an important thing to recognize and be conscious of. And it's just so natural to Joey. I'm a big fan.
I also say that honestly to my therapy clients, like when I'm suggesting like, I don't know, a coping skill or for them to really do anything, like I would never ask them to do something that I haven't done or I don't think like is effective. And so I just think it also shows like a level of like willing to be at someone's level and like the thought of empathy for someone. And Joey has a lot of empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of him. This episode, I can be pretty critical at times, but this was an episode where I have very little critical feedback for Joey. He really nailed this one in a lot of ways.
Okay, so then we get to this evening portion of this group date, and Kelsey, there she is again, making her presence known.
Always.
Right up next to him, we see an interaction with Daisy and Joey. We see what I thought was a really sweet interaction between Rachel and Joey, where Rachel comes with her glasses on and he pulls his glasses out and says, like, I told you, like, if you come with your glasses, I'm going to put mine on too. And I just thought that, again, just such a nice moment of, again, meeting someone literally where they're at and like vulnerability matching. I loved it. But then the most meaningful interaction we see in the evening portion is between Kelsey T and Joey. And Kelsey T is going in saying, I want to make sure that he knows that I'm here. And so she basically says that to him. I want to make sure you know I'm here. And I want to
bury the lead, just went straight for it.
Yeah, very absolutely. Direct. And she asks, directly, point blank, what do you need from me? And he says, like, I just need quality time, and what do you need from me? And she says, like it's about actions for me. Like a small gesture is meaningful. And Joey picks up the line. What's the expression? Just picks up the ball. Maybe that's where I'm going with that. And he kisses her. And she ends up getting the group date rose.
I want to pause you really quickly because in the show notes, this is exactly what we've had multiple Reactivity TVs, as well as you and Catherine have had multiple Wishing You Well podcasts on love languages. And this is a great demonstration of 2 of the love languages. And so I'm going to put those in the show notes so that you all can catch a couple of different episodes. You can learn more about the different attachment styles,
Mhm.
and what it means to be what Kelsey's basically saying here is that she is an acts of service
Mhm.
individual, and quality time is one of the love languages,
Mhm.
which is what Joey's claiming he is. And so, if you want a whole lot more information on those, check the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also talk about what they looked like on Golden Bachelor, if you're curious. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And it's great that they're having those kinds of conversations at this point. And Joey also says that there's something about being with Kelsey that he just gets lost in her. And he says it later on too, like after leaving an interaction with Kelsey, like she is so front of mind. And so that's also really meaningful as we go into like this next part of the season.
Yeah, the thing about the two Kelseys is that they were basically non-existent in the first episode,
Mhm.
and they both have come on very. I think Kelsey A's come on significantly stronger than Kelsey T, but they both have come on really strong. And I think that they have some legs here. Along with Rachel, I feel like our top 6 or 7. We're at 15 at the start of this
Mhm.
episode. We drop one during the episode. I feel like the top 6 or 7 is already pretty well defined at this point, and I think Rachel and both of the Kelseys,
Mhm.
are both there.
So
At
who are
this
you?
point.
So it's Rachel, Kelsey T, Kelsey A, Lexi, Daisy,
Maria,
Maria.
and then
Six.
I think like the borderline one would be Jen. I think those would probably be my top 7.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
So the only other like relatively notable part about the evening portion is the interaction that he has with Jess, which, she's trying to just like continue to make herself seem kind of relevant to him. While we were watching it though, I had said to
With
Chris,
very
like,
different reactions.
I was like, he's just not into this. Like, it is so clear he's not into this. And I thought he was actually going to send her home. But you had a
No,
really different reaction.
I mean, here's the thing. So she's done, and I do think that she came across a little desperate, in how much she was sort of throwing herself at him, which indicates to me that she might realize that she's really losing ground. This goes back to what you say all the time. The first impression rose is quite meaningless, oftentimes with bachelors, because out of sight, out of mind. Um, Jess came on and she was a powerful personality who ran in to make out with them, and that lasted for a small amount of time. But the problem is that there are a room full of women that are nicer than Jess, that are prettier than Jess, that are more interesting than Jess, right? And they're all kissing him now, and they're all being as forward as she was at the very beginning. And so, the early advantage that she bought for herself, she couldn't capitalize on it. And so, yeah, she's going home relatively soon, quite possibly in this rose ceremony that we didn't get one today, tomorrow's rose ceremony. That wouldn't shock me at all.
Mm.
It just, she got out to a strong lead, and then for whatever reason, production did not put her in a situation where she could capitalize on it, and she's been relegated sort of to the back, and she was never going to be able to hold that front position. It just
Yeah.
wasn't going to happen.
Right, right. Yeah, I didn't see her going particularly far either. Okay. So should we get to what leads up to the main event with this 2-on-1 date? If we're calling the main event
Yeah. Oh,
the
I
Leia
mean,
situation.
well, oh yeah, yeah. So I think let's be honest. This entire episode revolved entirely around the 2-on-1. That's in the fallout with Leia, after the date. Everything else was pretty much fluff and boring and not all that exciting. So yeah, so let's get into the 2-on-1 date. Um,
I just wanted to note something right before the 2-on-1 date. Like they kept, as you saw if you watched, like they kept kind of shooting back to the house, like intermixed with the group date. And so we're watching Sydney's reaction to going on the 2-on-1 and Maria's reaction, and the juxtaposition between their view of the 2-on-1 was such a good characterization of who they are as people and how they operate. Sydney said, obviously, this is not going to be fun. This is torture. Maria says, hey, I'm going to get to see a little bit of Malta. Like, and
Worst case scenario.
and like that, those are two fundamentally different ways to view the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, that frames up for me like everything I need to know about these
Yeah.
two women and how they navigate stressful situations.
One comes about with a victim mentality. One
And
is a
hyperbole.
hyperbole victim, and the other one is coming across as, silver lining, gonna try and make the most of the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So they head on the 2-on-1, and we have Sydney with a face to camera and a voiceover saying, I need to get this girl out of here. It's like spending the whole day with the devil. And it's just like, okay, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna let you take this because I need
Too passionate.
I need to regulate myself a little bit
Okay.
before I don't want to pull a Sydney and talk shit about someone talking shit.
Okay.
While talking shit.
All right.
So.
All right. Well, so this 2-on-1 date is starts off on a yacht, which fantastic, beautiful boat. I love that they just kept dropping the girls together. Is this normal for a 2-on-1 where they drop them together and the girls like don't talk? Are they normally more friendly, or do they only do the 2-on-1 when there's friction?
Always.
It's always a friction situation. Yeah, because I mean, these two girls, and I kept saying, Maria, please don't take the bait over and over. Because Maria,
that's all we kept saying to the screen. Like, no, Maria, don't do it.
Maria is somebody that you can bait. That's the problem. Is that's her problem. And that's a little bit of the immaturity. Sometimes don't take it. Just sit in silence. Silence is powerful sometimes. And she was good during the early part of the date where she was letting the silence rule. Joey comes up and joins them, and they go on to go and check out some of like the kind of the cave structures,
Blue
Grotto, which looked beautiful. The whole thing looked really, really cool. I'd love to actually have gone and done that. And you see Maria trying to make the best of it. And I mean, Sydney is just sapping the life out of this date. If you're on a date with two people and one of them is fun and one of them is miserable, you're going to send the miserable one home.
Well, particularly really when you don't even have a foundation with the miserable one.
And that's the problem. Yeah. I mean, Sydney had no, and this entire date, all of Joey's voiceovers, all the things that he's talking about, even with the women, the way he approaches both the women, the things he says, it's always my connection to Maria, my connection to Maria, my connection to Maria. How do I feel about Maria? It's never once, not one time in this episode did he talk about his connection with Sydney or how he feels about Sydney. Because as I said last episode, there's nothing there. She's only made it through this far because production is stirring the pot. That's the only reason. There was never a chance, and this is why it was kind of a waste of a 2-on-1. There was never a chance that Maria or that Sydney was going to stay and Maria was going to go home. The only possible, hiccup here would have been if he just decided to send them both home, which seemed unlikely to happen because it's a free look for him. Why would he send Maria home? Again, I talked about he, as the lead, has the capacity to go in and do however much due diligence he wants. He could have walked into that house and he could have said, hey, Leia, come talk to me. He didn't. Why did he not? He didn't want to know. Because it's a classic guy. Don't want to know. I like Maria. I don't need information that's gonna whatever. He could have gone in there and talked to Medina. He could have gone in there and just pulled a couple random girls. He did none of that. And why? Because his decision was made last week. He already knew what he was going to do. And so it all just was so anticlimactic in many ways. But it was hard to watch because I mean, you just saw Sydney spiraling.
But I mean, you mentioned at the top of this episode that this was a very easy to diagnose armchair psychology episode. So from your armchair psychology position, what do you think was going on for Sydney? Why do you think she rode this train?
Okay. So, I mean, my opinion on Sydney is pretty straightforward. I think she is wildly insecure. It's pretty clear that she's immature. And I said it last episode, I don't think that she's the type of girl who's been told no or been rejected very often. And she doesn't really know how to handle being in a situation where she's not just going to get what she wants. She's, gives a lot of vibes of a mean girl. It doesn't feel like her perception is particularly strongly tethered in what other people would agree or what others' perceptions would be, i.e. in reality. If you think about it, it's a sports metaphor in here where you know, you're a stellar athlete, right? All through high school, all through college, you're the best, and you're the best person on that field every single game that you play. And then you make it to the pros, and now you're with other freaks of nature, phenom athletes, and it turns out for the first time in your life you lose. You won every game because you were so phenomenal, but you were a small fish, or sorry, you were a big fish in a small pond, and you get to the NFL or the MLB or wherever, and suddenly you kind of suck and you don't know how to cope. And that's when you see the character of a person, of an athlete in particular, is how do they deal with, for the first time in their life, losing, for the first time in their life, not being the best player on the field. I think, there's a direct transitive property here to that with this show. Whereas I think a lot of contestants on the show are in that 0.001% of whatever their circles are. And for somebody like a Sydney, she's the athlete, she's a Johnny Manziel who just bombs out, doesn't know how to deal with not being just naturally the best person and just being the top person on the field that day. Took me a while to get there, but
no, interesting. Yeah, I could see that being at play. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot, and I have to shout out Catherine for this because I had sent her a message right before we started recording saying like Amy the person is like way too present right now to record from like a therapist point of view, especially about Sydney. And she gave me a couple of things to consider like when thinking about Sydney. And it's not that I'm gonna watch what I was just gonna say. It's not that I'm trying to have empathy for Sydney. I guess I'm not. I guess I just let that slip out. But it's more that like I feel like I want to try to understand like why this might happen, right? Like we're being pretty critical of Sydney. Most of the internet is being pretty critical of Sydney, and so like why would Sydney or why would someone engage in ways that Sydney does, given what we know? And so this is not an assessment of Sydney, but this is just like, why do people do this, right? Like, why do they get into this hyperbolic state, like adopt a more victim mentality, do a lot of finger pointing? And so like a lot of what Sydney is demonstrating is just like at like first level, we talked about last week, lack of maturity and lack of self-awareness, like really is not spending time being introspective and thinking about her behavior. Why might that be? She's young. And so like brain isn't fully formed yet. Prefrontal cortex is still forming up there. So like maybe she doesn't have like the total brain functionality that we do, me in my late 30s, you at 40. Right.
Just punch me in the gut while you're at it.
I didn't say almost 41. So you're welcome. Okay. So there's a maturity factor, and just like we don't have the ability to be as insightful. She doesn't have the ability to be as insightful as like we do. Okay. But then when you start to also peel it back a little bit more, one of the huge barriers to self-awareness and developing insight, and then even more so applying insight, is often related to shame. When we see people who can't take responsibility for their actions and they're often finger pointing, for me as a therapist, especially a trauma therapist, it's immediate like shame flag.
This is Cat with a K from BIP.
Hey, it's common. So yes, very, very similar vibe in that sense. And so like for someone who again is so strongly in this like hyperbole and victimhood, it makes me think that someone, again, not Sydney, but someone who does this must have experienced some form of I don't know, hardship as it relates to interpersonal relationships in their lifetime in order to have such strong defenses. She's so highly defended that she can't even like see over the walls that she's built or see through them to like get close to reality. And so that's what I'm seeing here is like, this is self-preservation on her end. She doesn't believe she's doing anything wrong. She still believes that she's defending Medina. She still believes, like, I do believe, I have to always believe like the best intentions, like, or else I would not survive my job. But like, she has to believe that she's doing the right thing, but she just can't see beyond her own perception, because her own perception if she let that fall away and looked a little bit closer at reality, she would recognize like, oh shoot, I have fault here. And that's like too much to bear. And so that's what I think is happening here. That's why I think we see that happen in people. Not again, I'm not here to diagnose Sydney or assess Sydney, but like this is quite common behavior.
Interesting. So your take is that she is carrying some unresolved shame, and it's
Yeah,
not
or like some other
because
wound. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not because she sucks at football.
Not because she sucks at football now that she's in the major leagues. Wrong league. National League.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. Okay. I almost got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, correct.
So we roll into the dinner portion that we are not allowed to eat at, and Joey goes straight into the rows, asks them each the same question, and that is, do you see anything with me?
Do we have a strong enough connection to have a future?
Something like that. Which fine, pretty good. Again, this all just felt stupid because
He was just setting it up so Sydney
exactly.
could go home.
Sydney says a bunch of stuff that I honestly
all the confidence she had at last week's talent show.
Yeah, it just, but just kind of zoning out during her response because it's just the whole thing just doesn't work. I actually before we get it, can I just point out this 2-on-1 date wins for best date soundtrack. They had some real like sort of melodramatic like thumpy thump music.
Yeah, the producers were producing. That was
at one point they had like horror music going, and then they had some like real like melancholy stuff.
Really set the mood.
I mean, they really really mooded things up with the music. That best date soundtrack of the 2.25 seasons I've seen of this show by far. Yeah, by far. Anyway, so back to the giving of the rose here. I think the really noteworthy thing here was Maria's attempt at a power play. Okay. So Joey asked the question, do you see something? And she starts off with, well, I did when I first got here. And I'm like, oh no. Like, Maria, don't do what I think you're going to do. Like, don't do it. And me, I'm I have a visceral negative reaction to when people try to power play me, to the point where I would have just sent her home right there just because I'm not about that whole game. But she softens it. It didn't come as hard as I thought she was going to come, but there was definitely being like, well, I don't know if I'm ready now. You might have lost me by believing this bitch over here. And I was just like, oh, Maria, don't do it. Please don't do it. Just be humble here and say, I think you're a great guy. I'm excited to see where this goes. And like, let's just get through this. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I wrote like power move, question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, yeah, I was getting a little nervous. I'm similar. It's like, I see what you're doing, Maria. I don't know if this is the time or the place, but hey, she oh my gosh, to use the most overused phrase of this episode, spoke her truth. And we have to talk about that.
Yeah, we have to talk about that.
And she was honest and said like, and so anyway, so she was honest. And Joey said like, essentially like, I liked your answer. Like, you were yourself, you were honest. And
which was bullshit. He was picking her the whole time. And so as long as she didn't say, like, no.
But the reason why I think it could have mattered is that goes to show Maria's not going to fucking bullshit. She's not going to just pander to you to tell you what you want to hear. That would make me believe her more that Sydney was lying and that Maria was willing to gamble this on her truth. And so like, if I'm Joey, I'm like, all right, yeah, there's no way. Like, clearly Sydney's full of shit. She's saying that we have a connection. We never spent any time together. We haven't even kissed yet. Or maybe they have, I don't know. But yeah, so that would make me honestly believe Maria more.
So I think the more noteworthy thing is that obviously he tells Sydney that she's not getting the rose, walks her out, comes back, has the rose, is prepared to talk to Maria and hand her the rose, and Maria doubles down on her power play. It's like quit while you're ahead. What are you doing? I thought the second that we'll call it power play B was a little bit, it was delivered a little bit better than the first one. But still, I was like, oh, Maria, just quit where you're ahead. Get the rose, live to fight another day. Like, But hey, look it. I said all along, he's into her.
He's just super attracted to her.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
They have good
absolutely.
chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a reason why I picked her in my four. I think she has a possibility to go really, really deep, and you know,
Well, we'll see what happens
yeah.
tomorrow.
So, so yeah, so Maria ends up getting the rose. She accepts. Notice how the second he offers her the rose, suddenly she's gooey gooey again. None of this, I don't know anymore. It's
Well,
like,
remember from the first episode, she was like, I am not kissing him. I'm not going to kiss him like all these other girls. And then it's like, oh, I kissed him.
yeah, yeah. Well, Joey's dreamy. What can I say?
He is quite a dreamboat.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So shall we go to the cocktail party?
Yes, the rose ceremony cocktail party.
So Leia could be seen in the background, you know, with her scowl on her face a bunch of times, looking over everyone's shoulders. So we knew something was brewing there. And I mean, this is a great example of the differences between men and women. Men never get involved in another man's fight. It's not something we do, you know, and I'm constantly shocked and just surprised when we have these things. Sydney jumping into Medina's defense. Let Medina fight her own battles. Sydney goes home, and now suddenly, apparently, Leia is upset that Medina is not being mean to Maria, and now she feels compelled to come to Sydney. So Sydney was fighting on Medina's behalf when she didn't want to, and now Leia is fighting on Sydney's behalf on behalf of Medina. Does this make any sense to anybody? Mind your own goddamn business, people.
Well, and okay, maybe the difference between men and women, but like also the difference between immaturity and maturity. You literally like seeing Leia and Medina talk
Medina
was
was
like
A.
was like, oh my God, like this is perfect because Leia was basically like it was sort of surprising that you came in and you were being kind to Maria and Medina was like, wait, I'm sorry. Like, just because Sydney is my friend doesn't mean I'm going to be mean to somebody else. It's like, yeah, you're 31. That yes, you're oldest in the house. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Medina. Thank you for having the wisdom and experience of maturity, because clearly being one of the youngest in the house is doing a disservice. That's what's getting all of this shit stirred up. Who's starting the drama? Jess, Sydney, Leia, all the youngins in the house.
Yeah.
They don't understand how to stay in their lane, how to mind their own business, and like they're creating drama out of nowhere.
And here. Leia, like straight up insults Medina.
Oh yeah, she takes this moral high ground here of like, I just choose my friends based on a high standard of values, insinuating like, so I guess that we're not aligned here. And Medina's like, I'm sorry, I didn't invite a critique about how I'm navigating this really, really challenging experience.
Medina gets an A for me.
Yes.
And you know what? Here's the best part. I said this in the past. I said Medina didn't want to be in those conversations with Maria. She just wanted to be over and done with and wanted to move on with life. It was so apparent. Medina doesn't want to be in the middle of the drama. If you're gonna create drama, she's not interested. And that entire conversation with Leia, she's just like, she just wanted to get over with and done with. And even the way her and Maria interacted after the fact, like Medina is a mature young woman, right?
She's also a mental health counselor.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So she's trained to you know, handle these types of things a little bit better than other people as well. But yeah, it's just a great demonstration of maturity and how you're supposed to handle these situations. Medina gets an A for me. She was fantastic. Leia, I mean, thank God she was in this episode because it brought something to the episode into what was otherwise a real boring and dull episode. But man, like talk about way outside your lane, butting into something that has nothing to do with you.
Are we surprised? Let us not forget that she sobbed over the bonus card she got and then threw it in the fire. Like this is the same person. These are the same antics. Go home, please. I'm out. Do you believe that Maria's petition to go home is genuine?
I don't think I have a good handle on whether or not it's genuine or not, but I do think that this tracks in somebody who is at a high level of stress and could self-eliminate as a result.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's reminding me of like one of the main like principles of like DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and and that the major tenet of that is that we essentially have three minds. We have our emotional mind, our rational mind, and then our wise mind. And so when we are in emotional mind, like what we're seeing from Maria, like emotions rule the roost, like logic goes out the window, and so our ability to kind of like really think through decisions is not there. Like our goal is to be more wise-minded where we can balance both emotion and logic. And yeah, like it seems like in this moment she's like very emotionally driven. And so like her logic has left the building at this point. And so it might just be like an impulsive overwhelmed reaction of like, oh my gosh, I just she kept saying like I just can't win, like no matter what I do, like I'm trying to be positive here, like, and it seems that seems genuine, like I'm trying to be positive, I'm doing the best that I can, I'm gonna be a target no matter what. I don't know, I think she believes in this moment it's real, but I don't know how much she actually wants to go home. I don't know how much she's trying to get the reassurance from Joey of like, look how hard this is for me.
So I have a lot of feelings on this, but kind of in a nutshell, um, it seems like a disproportionate response to what's actually happened, right?
It feels like it just bubbled over really fast.
It bubbled over fast, but we've said in the past, Maria seems like a really confident individual. I do think that she handles a lot of these situations. She can be baited into confrontation. She doesn't explain herself well, or her position. And she does have a way about her that, if you want to take it out of context and misconstrue it, you can, fairly easily. And when you wrap all that together, she makes herself an easy target. And, I do think she's taking this being targeted sort of thing harder than she needs to. Like, it just seems disproportionate. Like, yeah, Medina, Sydney claimed you said something, changed the context, and Medina had some bad feelings about it. Okay, fine. Your beef has been with Sydney the entire time. Hasn't been really with anybody else. Medina doesn't really give a shit. And Leia is upset because she likes Sydney, but like, again, like, this is your first altercation with Leia. So the whole thing just feels overblown to me. Like, I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens, but it was a great way to end an episode. Good job. I'm glad we get it this, like I was a little annoyed that we had two episodes this week, but I'm glad that we don't have to wait. Like I'm glad to get it this week, and
I feel like Leia might go home.
I hope she deserves to go home. Do you think she'd self-eliminate?
No.
Oh, but Leia did what all these people do on these shows, which is so fucking disrespectful. And I hope that Joey calls her out on this. And this would be the reason to send her home, because she says, and I quote, we were all surprised by the way that you handled that decision and that Sydney is gone. But I totally trust your decision making. And it's like, oh, really?
That does sound like it.
Because you just basically said, you think I made the wrong decision,
Yeah.
and then but you trust my decision making. So
Yeah.
that I find is the most condescending thing. It happens every season. Don't tell me that you trust my decision making, and then try to influence my decision making. Like, and so for me, that rubbed me the complete wrong way. I was like, no, I don't like that.
You asked about my rose this week.
Love it. My thorn this week.
I hated to see that.
Before we sign off for tonight, we need to do our rose and thorn.
Rose and thorn, yeah. Okay.
So where are you at?
I'll start with my thorn.
Okay.
3 big pieces of steak on a 2-on-1 group date.
This is literally.
And they didn't get to eat them. They didn't even pretend. It wasn't even like, it was like literally they sat down, he picks up the rose, eliminates one, and they leave. I mean, the food didn't even get cold. It was tragic. I sat there the whole time. Said, like, I hope they're going to give them to a homeless person or something. Like, don't waste that. Those are beautiful, beautiful pieces of meat.
We have a whole steak in the fridge. Do you want to go get it?
That's dinner tomorrow night.
Okay. What was your rose?
Sydney going home. was really nice. But my actual rose this week is going to be what I talked about a few times, and that's Joey's the leadership qualities that he demonstrated. Gained a lot of respect for Joey. He's 28, he's still relatively young, and he demonstrated some real maturity and certain characteristics, qualities, and skills that you don't find in people significantly older and more experienced than him. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And I was a big fan. Liked it a lot.
Mhm.
So it's officially the rose is the leadership qualities that Joey demonstrated
Mhm.
in this episode.
You took my rose. I'll start with my thorn and see if I can think of a different rose.
Okay.
Okay, my thorn was something I alluded to a few minutes ago, which is the overuse of the phrase speaking my truth.
Oh.
It is it is so misused.
Because you don't have a truth. You have a perception. There is but one truth, and everything else is a perception. Can I just point out that
This is my thorn.
you know what? I'm stealing this thorn because this. I'm happy you brought this up. When we tell people that they have a truth, right, we are ultimately we're lying to them, but we're doing society a grave injustice here because what we're basically, insinuating to people or really overtly telling people is that, what they believe is reality. And that's not the case, right? You have a perception, I have perception, you have perception. We can disagree. And if we disagree, I am not, somehow tearing apart reality, right? I'm not somehow suggesting that your reality is false. We're allowed to disagree. And this is a big, big, big problem. And it's being pushed heavily, in the younger generations right now. You don't have a truth. Anytime you say my truth, you're talking about your perception and you're doing yourself and everyone around you a disservice by using those terminology. I'm sorry.
I want to speak my truth now.
What is your gripe with the phrase my truth?
Well, it's not very far off from what you were saying. I think, yes, we all have our own unique experiences. We all have which are heavily impacted by like what by our upbringing, by our own, like, again, lived experiences that drastically impacts our worldview, our own perception and perspective, and the way that we view the world, the way that we view ourselves in the world. And those things are very subjective and very skewed. And so, yes, to put a label on something that says, this is my truth, AKA, this is a fact, makes it really difficult to engage in conversation with, and really difficult to not even disagree, but to offer like an alternative perspective. It's as though it like puts up a shield, like, again, highly defended, puts up a shield around even trying to understand another person's perspective, or like that you and I can look at the same thing and see something different. Like, that's beautiful. And so that we kind of strip that away with kind of standing so firmly in this idea of, well, this is my truth and this is what it is. I think that it started as something really beautiful and has morphed into a defensive posture that, again, I think for bringing us closer together, that's what it started as a way to feel more understood. It's now putting us in adversarial positions, and that's what I have a problem with.
See, I actually think that you are being way too kind. I don't believe if you kind of look at how that entire phrase, where it came from, how it started, I don't believe it was ever intended for a useful purpose. I think when you look at kind of from a societal perspective, the areas of society that were pushing that phrase, they tend to be a rather transgressive grouping of organizations and individuals. I don't think it was. I think you're giving it too much credit as being a beautiful thing that was supposed to bring us together. I disagree with that heavily.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and maybe I've like drank the Kool-Aid on it, but I think again, I'm a trauma therapist. And so like, one's experiences and their narrative is incredibly important to understanding a person and a person understanding them. And also being able to own your truth and like own your experience allows us then the opportunity to turn the page and like be able to formulate a different view of ourselves and a different view of our experience. So there's so much power in kind of like owning your story and like owning what has happened in your life so that you can move forward. And so like that's the way that I understand it. And I think again, in with trauma specifically, like so much of the experience of the person who's experienced um traumas or traumatic stress has been being invalidated about their experience throughout their life. And so again, there's power in again standing in your truth and owning what happened. That is like where healing happens. And so like I get it, like from like just a normal like rhetoric kind of thing, but like in therapy, like for this purpose, like it's incredibly powerful and healing, but it's also done in the safety of a therapist's office where a therapist could invite you to challenge particular not facts of what happened, but your beliefs and your reactions to what happened. And again, that's useful in therapy, of course, but like not as useful in life.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you're saying. But I think there's a distinct difference in telling somebody to own their narrative
Mhm.
or words have meaning and words have power in their meaning. And when you choose specific words and kind of manipulate their meaning,
Sure.
I think that's where we get into a lot of danger.
I totally agree. And again, like the way that this is my truth is now being used is like you can't disagree with me because this is my truth.
Yeah.
And again, the use of the word narrative is on purpose again in therapy.
Yes.
Because it relates to like essentially like this is the story that I have told
This
myself
is your perception.
about
Narrative is your perception.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so like in therapy, we live in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I'm not we're saying the same thing. But I think again, this is one of those we talked about it last week, bullying, gaslighting, narcissist. Like this is another one of those like potential therapy concepts that's now been like mass marketed to the world and has done like
more damage.
And so that's like where it's like so frustrating is like I'm glad that like the a message is getting out there about some of these terms, but like it's ruining the origin or like what they're really meant for. And so that is like those are all of my problems with like let me speak my truth or I'm speaking my truth because it um disrespects like what it's actually meant for and it puts us at odds with one another rather than like in collaboration. But you know what else gets my rose? Being able to record with you in real life. I did not enjoy recording virtually last week. That was really rough.
Yeah. Especially that time of night.
Oh God, it was awful. So thank you if you watched. But I much prefer recording with you in person.
I agree because it means that you're not off in Miami without me, leaving me in the cold.
All right.
Ready to get out of here?
We are. As a reminder, don't forget to check back with our channel, bell icon, subscribe. We'll give you a notification when our second episode of the week drops. So check that out. Check out our Instagram account at Reactivity TV. We have lots of fun Reactivity TV and Bachelor content over there. So go give that a follow as well. Thank you so much for hitting those couple of buttons for us. It really goes a long way and we do appreciate it. We've also got another podcast if you want to check it out. Actually, it's pretty timely. It's called Wishing You Well. And this week's episode, we had a phenomenal registered nurse on, and she talked all about balancing hormones and hormone health, which is a really nice partner to what Lexi was talking about in terms of endometriosis, et cetera, and other like fertility related stuff. So if you're interested in that, go check that out. She was fantastic. Ginny Noche, amazing.
Was that my mother?
It was not your mother, no. So you can check that out also on our YouTube channel and on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And you can follow Revive at Revive CFW on Instagram. Check out our website, revivecfw.com. You can follow me at Amy Albero LCSW. And I think I covered it all. That was a mouthful. We will be back some point later this week. We'll see you then. Bye.
You going to invite my mother on?
No.
See you tomorrow.